As I buttoned my blouse, the soft cotton brushed against my fingers with an almost imperceptible delicacy. I decided to go get a glass of water from the kitchen. As I walked, I took a deep breath to inhale the aroma of jasmine, which filtered through the open window, mixing with the subtle perfume of my skin. The sound of the birds outside created a soft, calming melody, as if they were weaving the perfect background sound for my little morning ritual. Suddenly a roar interrupted the harmony. I tripped over something unexpected, a flower pot that my husband had placed without warning. I looked down with the intention of reprimanding the absent-minded flower that caused my pain, because I felt the big toe of my right foot throbbing strongly, taking the pain to my core, but something else caught my attention. I turned towards the living room, and my heart beat with a sudden acceleration. There in front of me was a young man standing completely bewildered, unable to decide where to direct his eyes. My semi-open blouse left nothing to the imagination, and since I didn't know we would have visitors, I didn't wear anything underneath. The dazed young man looked anywhere but at me. But what he had to see, he saw. It was then that my husband entered, with an expression of disgust that made the air tense. His dagger-sharp words stabbed into my conscience. "How do you get in that way? Doesn't it make you a little sad? What does the boy think?" he told me. I felt a pang of irritation running down my spine. I looked up at him. "I was just getting water, I'm thirsty," I said, trying to calm the storm that was brewing in his eyes. "Find something to cover yourself with, or, do you like to show yourself to everyone?" he ordered, pointing at my clothing in a contemptuous manner. The atmosphere was filled with tension. My young husband and I didn't know where to look. My husband looking for the young man's eyes, to prevent him from putting them on me, and I, looking at the two of them without knowing what to do. My cheeks burned with embarrassment at being seen that way by a stranger, and at being treated the way my husband did at that moment, and I couldn't contain my response. "Why don't you tell me if you were expecting someone at home? It's not my fault for going out like that, or is it just not my house?" I replied, feeling the need to defend my innocence. As if it were a terrible crime, the young man lowered his head with his face flushed, not knowing what to say. The room was filled with the echo of our opposing words, like a verbal duel in a setting of tangled emotions. With blood already in my head, I did not resist at all and said, "I have the same thing that all women have, and I do not believe that the boy has not seen a woman in these conditions." I really didn't know what I was saying, because I was just trying to defend myself and not look worse than the situation. But as they say there, he was watering it too low. The boy finally turned his face to the wall, and I retired to my room to put on something else. Lost in my own thoughts, I hurriedly walked to my room. Meanwhile, my mind was filled with the image of that mysterious young man, who with just one look had managed to trigger a strange mix of emotions in me. Although I felt ashamed, I also experienced a disconcerting I don't know what, as if I had awakened something in me that was lying dormant. The gazes of unknown eyes that briefly landed on me left a sensation that made my skin crawl. The figure of the young man was engraved in my memory as if it were a painting that refused to fade. His long-sleeved shirt, with a large collar and buttoned only to the chest. His eyes, barely visible between his bushy eyebrows, had a unique appeal, something enigmatic that invited you to immerse yourself in their depth. The mouth surrounded by a thick beard suggested the maturity of a man who had lived longer than his years seemed. Every detail of his face exuded an intriguing charisma, as if he were weaving invisible threads that connected our souls. I laughed inside as if I wanted it to happen again, and I told myself, of course I would like it. And I am capable of looking for the opportunity. The rustle of the door opening echoed through the room, and I turned toward the door in surprise as my husband entered. "Honey, I'm so sorry I treated you the way I did," he said in a sorry tone. I remained silent, and before I could articulate a response, his words fell like a shower of confessions. "Understand me, I got jealous and I didn't know how to react. I am very sorry for this situation we are going through. Because if it weren't for the bad deal I made we wouldn't be in this situation. My eyes widened in bewilderment, and I could barely manage a shaky breath. Jealous? Jealous of what, or why? Was I there because I was doing something bad? It seems to me that you are beginning to lose your sanity. Now I see that you are not only losing strength in that, but also in your form. Forgive me, darling, I forgot to tell you that this boy was coming to live with us. Well, he is the tenant, and the only one who is willing to pay what we ask for the room we have in. So, I'm going to ask you not to walk around the house like that from now on. Please. Put on something decent and come with me so we can show him the room. The sound of his words crashed against the walls, creating a tense silence that filled the room. I stood there in the middle of the room, trapped between the sigh of an apology, and the rumble of a new reality unfolding before us. The next morning, the rays of the sun danced in the kitchen, illuminating the corners where the fragrance of coffee had already taken up residence. It was then that the tenant looked into the kitchen. A good morning full of shyness. Good morning, madam, good morning, come on in, I responded with a smile that tried to dispel the discomfort. Shall I help her with something? Well, I tell her that I am very good in the kitchen. In my family we are 3 brothers, and my mother taught us that we should learn to cook, to help when we leave being single. No, don't worry, I can handle this. Sit down, I'll serve you, I said, desperately wanting to serve breakfast and get out of there as soon as possible. I didn't know how to approach the situation, how to apologize for the awkward episode of the previous day. However, before I could find the words appropriate, he broke the ice. Is your husband at home, or is he out? He asked. He's been gone for a half hour or so. I told him. Well, he began, I want to apologize for what happened yesterday. The truth is, I didn't mean to be reckless, but like you, I didn't know it would turn out that way. There's no need for apologies, I responded, feeling a shared relief. I would have left, but this place and its proximity to they kept me at the university, he said. Rather, it's me who should apologize, because I think I went too far with what I said. He said, well, maybe a little, with what he said about her having everything that other women have. When you have more, he said with a tone of sincerity. What I saw yesterday was something wonderful, he confessed. You have a figure that drives anyone crazy. My cheeks burned, and my heart lurched within me. The cup of coffee I was holding threatened to fall, but I managed to keep it in place. It seems we'd better leave it here, I told him, trying to contain the rush of emotions that threatened to overflow. Well, I don't know if because of the economic difficulties, or because my husband no longer looked at me like before. Well, he and I no longer had anything at all, zero of that little thing, he always said he was tired. I think so, you are right, he agreed, showing regret. And excuse me, because I think it is I who is overdoing it now. Don't worry, we're both adults now and this should be normal. When night came, my husband, lying on the headboard of the bed, broke the stillness with his whispered words. Well, honey, you know we have a guest at home now, so we're going to have to avoid making too much noise. A shiver ran down my spine, and I thought about what would happen if our tenant heard us. Noise, I said with a sigh, what a noise, if you and I don't make a peep at night. The complicity of the shadows mixed with my frustration. I wish I had my share of that like before. Because I already feel like I'm rusting inside and out. The jingle of words hung in the air, charged with unfulfilled desire. I sat on the edge of the bed, with my back to my husband. You know, darling, the truth is that I don't know what else to do. I've tried to awaken that tiger in you, but I see that you no longer have eyes for me. Silence hung over the room, interrupted only by the soft melody of the night. I want you to tell me what's wrong with you, I murmured, almost like a whisper in the wind. Because maybe you don't see it, but every day I feel more alone in this house. My words floated in the darkness, searching for answers in the gloom. But instead of comforting words, my husband responded with his snoring. He was completely asleep. The clock on the nightstand said 12 o'clock at night. I quietly slipped out of bed, trying not to wake my husband, who was already in a deep, unshakable sleep. The idea of not making noise echoed in my head, the warning that my husband had left me before falling asleep. Apparently he didn't want our tenant to be disturbed by anything or anyone, least of all by me. But what he really wanted was to prevent the tenant from seeing me. I felt like going to the bathroom, my feet wrapped in silk slippers that barely rustled as they touched the floor, took me to the bathroom. Darkness reigned in the house, but I chose not to turn on the light, relying on the dim illumination of my phone to guide my path. The nightgown I was wearing, purchased in the hope of awakening the dormant flame in my husband, slid smoothly over my figure. The sheer lace wove into the gloom, creating an ethereal shadow that seemed to dance with each step. About to leave the bathroom, I prepared to activate the toilet when suddenly, a sound broke the silence of the night. Soft but obvious footsteps echoed in the hallway. My mind quickly latched onto the idea that he could be my husband, but when in doubt, I decided not to take unnecessary risks. And I hurried and let the water run, a sound that became my accomplice, announcing my presence without revealing my identity. But the door opened suddenly, and the light from the bathroom illuminated the figure of the intruder. He was not my husband, he was the tenant, the man who shared our dwelling. It seemed he was immersed in his own world, oblivious to the whispers of the night and the sounds that surrounded him, thanks to headphones that adorned his ears. We find ourselves in a situation as unexpected as it is uncomfortable. His eyes met mine, and in that instant, a mixture of surprise and confusion was reflected on his face. Two souls trapped in the same silent night, sharing a moment that neither of them had anticipated. He stood there, eager eyes reflecting forbidden complicity. With my index finger in my mouth, I made silent signs for him to remain silent. In a barely perceptible murmur I confessed my fear. My husband is asleep, and I don't want to wake him up. The small space we were in was filled with tension, like a thin thread that threatened to break at any moment. I wanted to avoid at all costs that my husband discovered us in the middle of this compromising situation. However, he did not interpret my gestures as a precaution, rather he took my hand with determination, defying the silence that reigned in the bathroom. It was inevitable, the encounter he feared happened. Sweat trickled down my forehead, fueled by the anguish of the possible revelation. We left the room without saying a word, like accomplices sharing a dangerous secret. There were no thanks or promises of a future meeting, just the echo of what had happened. Silence lingered in the air as each one returned to their reality. I went directly to my room, and fell into a deep sleep, as if what I had just done was a calming sedative. I let myself be carried away by the comforting embrace of dreams. The awakening came abruptly with my husband's voice, breaking the ephemeral peace of the night. "Wake up, look, this boy left the house." A note held in his outstretched hand, along with the month's rent, revealed the farewell to the intrepid companion of the previous night. The note said, "Thank you for everything, you were very kind and it was the most rewarding experience I had with you." We did not rent the room again, but its absence did not erase the memory that remained etched in my mind. I am not perfect, and although what I did was not right, I share this story in the hope that others will learn from my mistake. Conscience is cruel and gives no respite, because in the end, I discovered that my husband was dealing with a serious illness that robbed him of his vitality. A truth that came as a late blow, reminding me that sometimes, our actions have consequences beyond what we imagine.